Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Well, hello, and welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. We have an incredible episode for you today, speaking with someone who I am always inspired by and love connecting with. He is so heart-centered and just a brilliant mind, an incredible energy in the world. And I just am so grateful to know him as a human being. And I'm very excited to see him coming up shortly at the end of May, because today we are meeting with Alex Medin. He has been traveling and teaching yoga for over 20 years, for a long, long time. In 2002, he was certified by Pattabhi Jois in Mysore, India. And we've been friends for many years. He is just a bright light in this world and someone who actually has translated the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita into Norwegian. And in 2015, he took over what was then sort of a mountain lodge and turned it into a beautiful retreat center called Nosen Retreat Center. And we are talking to him today about what inspired him to do this, the story of how Nosen was created. And I'm very thrilled to say that I will be there at the end of May teaching a retreat in this beautiful mountain lodge in Norway, and I would love for you to come find me there. But more importantly, we're also talking about two incredible projects that he founded and originated. The first is called Gangster Yoga, which is an NGO that is focused on helping the youth at risk and also people who are incarcerated or imprisoned, giving them opportunities and supporting them in their transition out of prison into the world, also teaching yoga classes in the prison to help them learn to breathe and feel discomfort and to give them the tools to create greater clarity of mind and connect somatically with their body, and supporting them often as they're transitioning out of prison and coming back into regular life, which can be a very difficult time for people. And also Back in the Ring, which is an incredible project as well that really speaks to these issues of addiction. And so I think you'll find this very fascinating. It's a project that Alex started where he's supporting drug addicts and people struggling with addiction of all types and all sorts to use the practices of yoga, breathing, pranayama, breathwork, meditation techniques to help them develop greater self-awareness and to use these practices and these techniques so that they can step out of addiction and feel more joy and satisfaction and really re-engage with society, giving them hope and fulfillment and getting them involved in some incredible projects in India as well as in Norway. So we're going to talk to him about all of these things today, and I'm just really, really excited. I can't wait to jump into this episode and connect with Alex, and I hope you're excited about it too. And let's dive in now. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm here today with Russell K.
Harmony,
Hi.
I learned something interesting recently. We'd been approached by Duolingo, the language app. They're going to offer us 45 cents every time I use the word Duolingo
Oh gosh.
on the podcast. And I've been learning Swedish
Yeah.
because obviously I discovered our family headstone, a grave in Algutstorp near Göteborg, and now I'm very excited. And we're going to go to Sweden and study and teach yoga
Next year.
next year. And I've been learning Swedish. You know what I learned?
What?
This is how you say good morning in Swedish.
Mm-hmm.
Good morgon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same in Norwegian, Alex?
God morgon. Yeah. In
Good
Norwegian, in Swedish is god morgon. God
Good
morgon.
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 And in Norwegian, it's more like god morgon. Good morgon.
But like good moron is really offensive.
It's not moron, it's morong.
No, I just looked it up just to make sure for this bit, for this joke. I just looked it up, and it sounds the same, and it's very offensive in English. I can't go to Göteborg and then say good morons to the whole class like that. I can't do that.
Sure you can.
For those who don't understand English, they would just feel you being polite, trying to book the language.
It's condescending to you.
That's right. Well, our guest today
Did you learn English
I need to introduce him.
But did he use Duolingo to learn English?
No, he didn't.
Because your English is perfect. Did you use Duolingo? Did you use the language app Duolingo?
Never used it. In Norway, we grow up watching English television, from an early age, watching Hollywood movies. So that's how,
right.
But from school, that's where we learn to speak English. And you don't, Norway, it's only 5 million people. So you don't get very far. So you have to learn another language.
Oh, you wouldn't even speak Norwegian
You don't
very
get
much.
very far.
There's not many people to speak it to, is there? Everywhere I go, I meet someone speaking English. But if I only met a Norwegian once a day, I'm all day watching TV, then
you'll learn English. So today our guest is Alex Medin. Hello, Alex. We're so happy
Alex Medin
to have you today here.
Hi, Harmony. And we're looking forward to have a visit from you in Norway soon, too, in the end of May. Yes.
Yes, the end of May. I will be coming to, how do you say it? Nosen? Is that how you say it? But it has a much longer name.
Nosen. We have like a dirga, like a long vowel.
Nos. Beautiful. And then how do you say, I think it says yoga retreat, but in Norwegian?
It's an English word. We say yoga retreat center, but Nosen is kind of like also hotel. We call it Nosen Yoga and Mountain Lodge in English, but in Norwegian it's actually Nosen Yoga and Mountain Hotel.
How do you say it in Norwegian?
Fjellhotel. Fjellhotel. It's like a mountain.
Fjellhotel.
Would you pronounce the G in Swedish? Is it yoa?
In Norwegian, you mean?
Because they don't do the G in Swedish. It's really weird.
They don't?
Yeah.
That's the sloppy. That's the kind of sloppy people. We say yoga. It's the G is the
Swedish are sloppy people.
No.
My grandparents were sloppy.
Yeah. That's why Norway is soon taking over Sweden. Yeah, they have no future.
Oh, they should. They should. It would help those people.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of Norway and Sweden and Holland and I think of all the Viking tribes warring with each other.
Yeah. And the Swedes with the sloppy Vikings. Yeah.
But everybody know the Vikings came from Norway. It's from the inner fjords on the west coast of Norway. Sweden claimed to have Vikings, but everybody know they came from Norway. Then they went to Sweden. Then they went to the Baltic Sea and all other places.
Yeah. This Russia is actually Swedish, is what I understand. It's
Sweden?
Norwegian, actually.
Rus.
Norwegian.
The Rus from Sweden. It's a tribe from Sweden. They went down to the Baltic Sea and they took over Istanbul and they became Russia.
But they were originally Norwegian.
The Russians are originally Swedish.
What do you think?
I think that, everything points to Norway. It's the northern way, the northern lights, the Nordic Sea. It's the top of Europe. Of course,
This may be our most unpopular episode in Sweden. Yeah.
So you'll see it, when you finally come here. And Norwegian have something special. And they say, there's a standing joke. Why? Because, Norwegian oil fund, since the government was very smart in the 70s and early 80s, the kind of Norwegian oil fund, instead of letting the foreign investor control our oil, they started a kind of Norwegian, it was called a pension fund, but it's how they kind of invested all the money from the oil industry. So Norwegian kind of state deposit is doing very well now due to the kind of rich oil reserves that we have. So it's a standing joke among the Swedes that they say, why the Norwegian have so greasy hair is because the oil have risen to our head.
Oh, my word. Harmony and I are looking for a place to retire. Is Norway open to foreign immigration?
Uh,
Not so much.
much.
you have to be part of the EU.
Yeah.
we can give you a special deal at Nosen. We can give you a cabin, maybe.
Okay.
You can stay there
A
for
cabin.
parts of the year.
Oh,
Yeah, we can live out our retirement years like as a indentured servant. We can
Yeah,
just
maybe.
like cook and clean and live in the mountains.
Yeah,
with
we
you.
can give you a snowmobile and some skis, and you can be happy there.
Oh,
Yeah,
And
good.
Alaska Huskies, and you can have your own sledge, and yeah,
Yeah.
paradise.
Awesome.
But
It's like you do in
my
Canada, right?
Yes, it's very. I think the climate's very similar to Canada. We
Mm.
have, yeah,
We don't have as warm.
all 4 seasons.
Yeah, very strong 4 season. Unfortunately, our summers is not as hot as yours, I guess. It only goes up to about 30 degrees maximum.
Okay.
25.
Yeah.
my ancestry
Yeah.
app says I have 6% Norwegian. It's 38% Swedish, but like that 6% should give me like a passport, I think.
You can try to apply.
I'll write a letter. All right.
We're open to immigration. We need only being 5 million
You
people,
need
and
some people.
the baby boom is way past its peak, so we need people.
Yeah. Young people though.
Yeah,
Not
that's true.
us. Working
You have to
people.
be below 30, 40. So yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. But when I met you, we met in India. And if people want to hear about your journey to yoga, they can listen to our past episode where we went in depth into boxing and ballet and stowing away on a ship and
You have
all
an
kinds
incredible
of
story.
incredibly adventurous tales. But when we met, I think you had just finished your master's degree in yoga in philosophy, right? In Eastern philosophy or yoga studies. And then you were studying Sanskrit very intensely and living in India. Then you started living in
Studying
India,
in Mysore, in the
studying
Mysore College of
Mysore.
Sanskrit,
Yeah.
which is no one was
The
doing that.
Pathashala.
Sanskrit Pathashala. Yes.
Yeah. You had a kind of stature that was, head and shoulders above the normal kind of yoga bohunks that were just kind of strutting around. Like you were really, quite serious about it, and in a way that maybe the rest of us were just kind of dumb athletes. It was incredible to me.
Well, thank you. I didn't really think about it myself at the time because I was like a dog at a bone with Sanskrit. I just loved it, and it was such a privilege to be around these great teachers at the Sanskrit College and just
Mhm.
learning Sanskrit, in a conversational manner, studying the text, talking about it in Sanskrit afterwards. Of course, it was a privilege when you studied in the West with a kind of very slow manner, where you always had your thick Monia William dictionary on the side and you're kind of flicking it, spending half of your time just looking in the dictionary. So
Mm.
being in Mysore with some of these great teachers was very rewarding. So, and I felt also at the time, I felt a little kind of awkward, just like hanging around in Mysore. People went to yoga classes in the morning, and what do you do rest of the day, right? I mean, I didn't like
Sleep.
hanging around by the pool.
Mhm.
So to me, it became like just using the time to my best of my capacity. So I just kind of totally dove into the Sanskrit studies and
Mm.
got a very great connection with some of the people there. And they really influenced me in a fantastic way. And I never really thought about it at the time when I first came to India, because I never really planned to become a yoga teacher. But then all the time I spent studying Sanskrit was, of course, incredibly helpful to all my yoga studies and my later teaching of yoga.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. I think you must have so much energy because you also were doing like an incredibly advanced practice,
Yeah.
practicing third series and some of fourth series and,
I practiced
becoming.
next to you. It was exactly that. It was so much energy where I'm like, I'm dead dog tired. And I'm like watching you like, yeah, with enthusiasm. Like they say in the Yoga Sutras, practice with enthusiasm. And he had that. I'm like, I don't have that.
So much contagious fire, right?
Mm.
We all come into life with different energy. I kind of came into life with a breech birth, so I had to kind of work my way through. And ever since I survived that first birth, I'm full of energy. Life is easy after that.
Mm.
So I guess I was also the typical ADHD child. I was full of energy. I couldn't really sit still at school. And to me, yoga was just coming home. And I feel so infinitely grateful for all the time I had in Mysore, all the time I had with yoga. And hold on 1 second. Yeah. There's a guy calling me who his
Oh, yeah, yeah.
daughter is relapsing. So I just need to help him just 1 second. I just
Okay, yeah,
Take
yeah.
your time.
Take your time. Yeah, no
Take your
worries.
time.
yeah, it's fine. Call him later.
That's a good segue. I think this is a great opportunity to talk about this too, because having so much energy and like you said, maybe a little ADHD, right? Like just so much energy in this world. Thinking, I mean, your mind must think very, very quickly.
You
And
walk
then
much faster than me. I noticed that.
through
When we were in Taiwan together, I could barely keep up with you on the street.
through yoga though, you've like been able to channel, it seems like this energy and your thoughts and your mind and like really accomplish some very incredible things for yourself, but then also now kind of channeling that energy into, I mean, helping others in a pretty important and significant way.
Let me ask you a kind of maybe a more dire personal question. With all that drive, did you yourself ever feel the need to maybe take substances to calm yourself down and get into a cycle of addiction with something like that?
No, never. It was like kind of always.
No.
I
Okay.
it was no, the other. I mean, some people seek that in life, as a kind of
Yeah.
release from trauma and deep, deep pain. And maybe I was never really aware of my pain. That's why I was maybe racing around. But I always had, surplus of energy and feel grateful for that, and always wanted to kind of embrace life and be awake to all
Mhm.
the great things that
Mhm.
is here and now all around. And I had a few years in my end of my teens where I was kind of doing drugs and smoking a lot of dope and things like that. But that was more like a mental escape from various
Mhm.
family issues
But not a
and
cycle of addiction. It
no,
was
no,
just
no.
entertainment.
It kind of spiraled into a lot of detrimental negative consequences, and I ended up in prison and stuff like that. But then eventually I moved out of Norway and spent 23 years abroad, part of that living in Sweden, studying classical ballet for 3 years and working as a ballet dancer for 5 years, and then later going to London to study at SOAS and getting a degree in comparative religion and Sanskrit, and then taking a master's later and being introduced to yoga in the mid 90s kind of gave me you know, uh, in the beginning, it was just a beautiful way of practicing. It felt like, wow, this is incredible energy, this practice. It kind of fires me up. It makes me a better dancer. And I have to do this in order to kind of be at my, be on my edge, be at my peak. But then later, the interest in dance, theater, things like that just faded away because I was so absorbed by yoga. And maybe that was just my nature. When I got into something, it was just like totally
Mm.
focused, and all other things would just kind of slip. But you know, and the end of the story is I had a lot of energy. And when I moved back to Norway 14 years ago, I felt incredibly privileged to have been taught yoga, to know a little bit of yoga. And I wanted to share that with the kind of less privileged people that came to yoga, rather than the, rich housewives and high
Mm.
performers that who, had the privilege to go and to follow the yoga bus, the pop culture of yoga. So I started teaching in prison and starting teaching yoga for drug addicts. And slowly it grew and become a positive thing. And then in 2015, about 9 years ago, I've been working with some inmates, and I was thinking, shit, these people have nowhere to really go. And after they've been doing their time, to have something constructive and helpful. So I
Mhm.
came across this old derelict hotel, and I just kind of thought, how difficult can it be to run a hotel? I took it over, and then we started a yoga retreat center, and now it's a kind of full-time operational yoga hotel. And we feel like we're in John Cleese Faulty Towels. We're like totally we
Yeah.
don't know what we're doing.
Inmates running the asylum.
Due to the great interest in yoga, and due to the great interest and the great service that a lot of the inmates and former drug addicts gave back, we were able to kind of staple something on top of each other until it became a company that is now working well, and it's like serving a lot of people, and having 7, 8 people full-time employed, and then a lot of extra people that come there and work part-time and volunteer.
I feel like the seeds of this dream were kind of, I think when we actually very first met for the first time, it might have been in Thailand at Paul Dallahan's retreat
Yeah.
center.
Yeah,
And I think you were quite interested in like this retreat center idea, and kind of like not thinking of starting one, but like also just like thinking that it was like a really interesting kind of concept to have a yoga retreat center.
definitely. I mean, like, you could say that the first real mentor on the path of starting yoga retreat center was definitely Paul Daligan at Samahita in Thailand. But it started, I think, even before that, because I think it started at did you ever go to Swamiji's place in BR Hills?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I visited Swami, and he said, like, "Well, you should." He just said out of the blue, "You should start a retreat center in Norway, yoga retreat center." And we called it, what should we call, like, Jivamrita Yoga, something like that, And he laughed and said, "Yeah, I can create great food and just make it happen, like God's will." And I was like, that's where the kind of seeds were planted. And then I met Paul first time in India, I think 2001, 2002, and he started telling me about Yoga Thailand. He says, "Please come for a visit." And accidentally, I was actually going to Kuala Lumpur to help a person set up a yoga retreat center there, but then something came in the way and it didn't really work. And then suddenly Paul called me out of the blue because he and Jutuma was expecting a baby. He said, "Hey, Alex, can you come and help us here for a couple of months?" And I said, "Sure." And I came there, and then I got introduced to Ingo, at the Mandarin
Yes,
Oriental, and I
Oh,
went to
yes.
Inga.
Hong
Oh,
Kong.
yeah.
So that I went to Hong Kong to work for the Mandarin Oriental, the super hotel. Yeah.
Uh,
So what a crazy adventure. And eventually though, what brought you back to Norway? How did you end up like
Well,
taking this circle all the way back home? I feel it's a bit like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
I wish I could say it was something great, aspirational, but it was something it was heartache. I was crushed. I was gutted. I was floored with a heartache when I lived in Hong Kong.
oh,
There was a woman
uh,
we were supposed to get married, and I was like totally head over heels in love with her. And then she totally broke my heart. And I just like, shit, what do I do now? Because like I built my world around that. We gonna be together for the future. And then suddenly all those kind of airy castle just crushed to the ground. And for, I guess, 3 months, I kind of cried and was felt so sorry for myself. And then I just decided, okay, I need to go home to Norway to be with my friends, speak my language. And so that's when I moved back to Norway in 2009, actually. And then I just started, had to help build up Puro Yoga, which is a great yoga studio in Oslo, and taught Mysore style there basically for six six years. And then I took over Nosen.
I just want to say that it's not an indictment of Hong Kong. Women will break your heart in any country.
But although it was a terrible heartache at the time, we all go through phases in our life. And, when somebody does something to you, you think that, oh, that person is bad or whatever. How could she do that? But, we all also carry our own stuff. And for me, that was a trigger to get in touch with some of my own pain. Because, yeah, I had a lot of energy, but a lot of my life also, I, of course, ran away from some pain and challenging from the past and childhood and stuff like that. But despite all that, I was always positive with life. But that kind of soreness, and she touched a kind of very raw chord in me, where all the walls and defenses totally broke down. And sometimes we need that as a little reset. And to me, that kind of heartache was a reset to kind of, okay, what is important? What do I really need to do? And I just felt, okay, going home to Norway. I came home with two empty hands. I had nothing. I lived at Puro Yoga at the kind of back room. I had to wait for all the people to finish showering and going to the toilets before I could go to bed at night. And then eventually, I just wanted to share yoga. And then great things happen from that. And I feel infinitely, infinitely grateful. And, to kind of crown the story, of course, I eventually met a great woman, which I'm now married to. And we have a wonderful child. And I have two bonus kids, So, and we have a great house in Hemsedal. So life is really sweet and beautiful. But how brutal it was like 15 years ago. I thought I was going to die, from pain, just from being lost in this image of how I wanted life to be. And then I was like, needed to shift focus and it was supposed to do something else. But anyway, that's the story of how I ended up in Hong Kong. And yes, prior to that, it was Paul Daligan, I guess, and seeing his retreat center and how smooth and easy he was running it, and I was thinking, that this is something I also wanted to do. And I feel infinitely grateful that it happened one day.
Yeah. I'd like to just piggyback on that for just a moment about gratitude, because it's amazing how a system can affect your life or affect someone's life and what they do in that system. It can really severely abuse people and make them for the worse. But in a short period in the United States, the prison system was really trying to rehabilitate people. And so when my father was in federal prison, he was in a special program at a federal penitentiary in Lexington, Kentucky, where they were really trying hard to offer beneficial programs to help people. So my father studied music and painting, and he had yoga classes in 76, 77, 78. And when he came out, he was just a very healthy person. He was sober, and he did yoga in the morning, and then he would paint, and I would go into his studio, little boy in love with his father, and so happy to have him back. And I would watch him paint, and I have one of his paintings in my room that inspires me when I'm painting. And I feel like that choice of a country and of a nation to say we're going to rehabilitate our felons instead of punish them has been the crux of my life, that political choice, that now I have the means in which to self-care, and I have the means in which to flourish because of the way that my father was treated in prison. And so I just want to say, when you spoke of gratitude, it's like I have that gratitude for the way that my father was treated, and that your choice to participate in that kind of rehabilitation means a great deal, not just to that man, but to his family and to how his family carries samskara forward
Mm.
through generations.
That's beautiful to hear that and to kind of feel how that influenced your father. And the sad thing is that anybody going to prison, unfortunately, end up worse than better most of the time, unless they have a very good rehabilitation program and is allowed to do creative things, and also that it could be somehow, a prison sentence should ideally be a kind of personal retreat where you kind of work on yourself and you come out as a better person. But when you're locked down and feel traumatized because you can't deal with your anger and frustration, and um, people tell you what to do all the time, or you're trying to apply for things and nobody want to listen to you. It's very, very frustrating. And I've seen a lot of kids actually uh, get mentally very negatively affected by being in prison, and eventually they become pacified and careless about life, rather than seeing the richness and fullness and the beauty of life. But when these walls is shut down and you have like nowhere to go, nothing to deal with, you also close down some walls inside of you. You become bitter and you become hard. And there's a saying that, yeah, the prison walls is hard to get out of, but the prison walls you built inside of you from simply being in prison, because you become tough in order not to feel emotion and feel helpless and sad. That's almost worse. So
Mhm.
part of that, keeping that in mind was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring yoga to the prison system. And it can be a beautiful thing if people are open to it and willing to try it. And for some people, of course, it's just a waste of time. They want to, lift weights or do other things. But to at least have that opportunity in the prison system to kind of let down the defense mechanism, learn to relax, learn to find peace of mind, experience the inner sense of harmony. That is what people need in order to kind of start, getting in touch with the real values of life. Until you do that, you're kind of caught in denial, or you're caught up in anger. And if you're caught up in anger, there's like a prison wall that holds you back from just simply relating to life.
Mhm. What are some of the things that you've observed? Like, you must have regular students that are coming to your classes. You must, I mean, are they like in prison for life? Do they get out of prison? Like, what are some of the things that you've observed from
You
working?
mean in prison? Yeah. What I observed is that, yeah, I've worked with, prisoner people who are there for life to, you know, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, a few years. And um, some of them in the beginning are very, very suspicious of yoga. They just come maybe because they're bored and they want to fill their time, or, sometime out of curiosity. But when you give people the opportunity and consistency over time, something change when they get a practical experience of learning to let go, learning to relax, uh, learning to feel that they disconnect themselves from all the noise in their head, but people are very different. Individuals are different. Some people take to it very quickly, and like I was in the prison today, and I met one guy. He's only in his 40s, and he's been to prison for 20 years, and did a program with him 10 years ago. And he came to me today and kind of embraced me and say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry, I was so ungrateful and had cocky and full of attitude 10 years ago. But I tell you," he said, like that yoga program we did, it's kind of gave me a new rebirth, he said. He said it was like he was liberated finally from just some deep, deep stuff. And, he's been seriously medicated by the government because he was a heroin user and, so he was on, heavy Subutex substitute and a lot of other benzo treatment. But just to see him, he's still struggling with his stuff, but just to see how, 10 years ago, that yoga practice, how much that affected him. And he feels that now he's reading a lot of, books on Buddhism and yoga and things like that. And he told me like, the greatest thing, just make sure you harm nobody, he said. That's the greatest law. Cause no violence, whatever. And for him to learn that, it was a beautiful thing. So people are very different. This guy was obviously, when he first tried it, he had a bit of an attitude problem, but then eventually, anybody who learns to, if they're able to turn their focus and attention inward and to experience the kind of polar opposites of emotional stuff that goes on in our body. And once there is a subtle experience of balance and inner harmony, that's a beautiful tool to put people on the right path. But then, I taught people yoga and I thought they did really, really well. And they got out of prison and still, a few months later, they're back in prison. So it's not always, it isn't, by no means is it a wonder cure, of course, but it's the best tool I come across. Rather than to sit and talk to a shrink about mental problems and you repeat your story again and again from the past, and all your problems and trauma and why life is difficult. With yoga, there's like a direct experience of breathing and learning to become just present in the moment. And if you teach people that, it can be a wonderful tool for improvement.
Can I ask you, we had this experience working with Title I communities in tough schools and inner city neighborhoods, that the problem of vulnerability and vigilance, when in this environment, vigilance is what's keeping you alive, keeping you safe. Vigilance is protecting your reputation from harm, which is all you have if you have nothing. And then to go in and say, we're going to do downward dog, or we're going to do a back bends, or even just relax. These things are so contrary to maintaining vigilance. What techniques do you use to kind of help people with you lowering their guard when their guard is keeping them safe?
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, I tried taking them straight through an Ashtanga practice, hoping that it's going to work. And it's just made them even more vigilant. So, I learned from trial and error. And now I just make them lie down on the floor and breathe, basically. Breathing, balanced breathing. And then eventually working on trying to kind of stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system rather than the sympathetic nervous system that is all fired up. So I start with calm breathing, like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, letting them feel that and connect with kind of beingness. And then eventually I start teaching them to, say breathe in 5 seconds and exhale 10 seconds and sometime hold a little bit after the exhalation just to feel safe. And that's their kind of first introduction to yoga. And a lot of people are just happy, I could finally sleep, I could recall, and some of them is just happily snoring, just being lost in dreams. But and then gradually I do some yoga gentle exercises, lying down on the floor, just kind of cuddling. But what you say is there is this strong sense of vigilance almost for most inmates, because you're always on guard, because that somebody could explode is very present and palpable. And some people are walking on eggshells, in order not to create noise, and they're constantly afraid. And other people, they are just like super hard and tough and being out of touch with anything. But what I experience is that vigilance is a way of coping with life, and some people have never experienced anything else, and that's why they have problems falling asleep, and then they are totally dependent on seductives in the prison, and they need sleeping pills in order to just knock themselves out.
Mm.
But the most beautiful thing I know, and this is why I'm doing it, still teaching in the prison, is because when these kind of hardcore criminals finally lower their guards and experience beingness rather than hardness, and oneness rather than total, and diversity, there is a potency of energy that is so strong. You could feel it in the room when these people lower their guard and they finally relax, and they come and hug you, and there is something beautiful. And you say, yes, some of them has done some terrible stuff and they need to be in prison, but at least giving them the tool or opportunity to experience a greater state of being rather than this inner tension, strain, and hardness and vigilance all the time. I find yoga is a beautiful tool to see how they soften, lower their guard, and dare to be vulnerable. And of course, that's where all the great strength in life is. And everybody knows that, who has dared to work through some stuff. You need to be vulnerable in order to be
Mm.
strong. Otherwise, you'll
Yeah.
break sooner or later.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I'd love to hear, so you started working in the prisons and then you kind of developed this program of rehabilitating drug addicts or working with drug addicts through a rehabilitation program. And then this kind of eventually led into using Nosen. Nosen.
Nose.
No.
Nosen.
Nose.
As like part of this bigger vision and project. Can you talk a little bit about how that all came about?
Well, how it came about is that actually, I had this idea in the back of my mind that I always wanted to run a yoga retreat center. But of course, I wasn't there, and I thought about, having it in Thailand or India, somewhere beautiful, but I didn't have much money and things like that. So when I came back to Norway, I let that idea go a bit, that I would, oh, wow, I'd love to have yoga retreat center. But then, funnily enough, the spring of 2013, I drove with my son Benjamin. I just, bought him a second-hand car, and we were driving up in the mountains, and we were driving by this beautiful place. And I stopped there and I said to Benji, wow, imagine having a yoga retreat center in this location. That would be awesome, And then I didn't think more about it. I just kind of, it was Easter 2013, and then the summer came, and I had some savings that I, made from yoga and stuff like that. And I wanted to do this summer project with drug addicts in Oslo. So I went around Oslo and going down to the places where the drug addicts are and some institution and just recruiting them and say, hey, I have this project I want to do for 8 weeks. And if you succeed, I'll buy you a ticket to India. That was like the catch. And I worked with about 20 people, and 10 of them I took with me to India summer 2013.
I remember seeing all these pictures of you with them in India, and you had them on some very intense yoga, working, building like a temple or an ashram for
Yeah, that was
Vijaya, right?
that was a year later. But the first thing we just went to my friend Vijaya's place from the Sanskrit college, who's a wonderful guy. And I was just love hanging out with him. So, and his father is a very strict Brahmin, and it's just incredible that we managed to bring 10 drug addicts to his house, But while we stayed there, we built some shelters for the poor in that village, and we practiced yoga, and we had some dialogues about values and stuff like that. And when I came home, the press in Norway came to know about it. So it became a big thing in the press. They, yoga rehabilitation for drug addicts. So suddenly it just got the case picked up and it got a lot of momentum in the press. And then it was this old man, 80 years old, who basically had a daughter who died from an overdose of heroin. And he said, look, I want to give you some money. So he gave me almost 50,000 US dollars and said, please take them. I want you to do something good with this money. Okay.
Wow.
So here I am, just used most of my spending, taking some drug addicts to India. Then I come back and then somebody's giving me 50,000 US dollars. And I think, I need to do something good with this money. So then I thought, maybe, because during that summer period of 8 weeks in 2013, we stayed in some different farms and, we would do yoga on the weekdays, Monday to Friday at Puro Yoga in Oslo. And then on the weekends, I would take them doing some funny things. We would go to Hemsedal or we go to Gaustatoppen or to Telemark and do various things together. And then I remember, a lot of them saying that they miss to have a safe haven to live in, either after prison or being after a drug rehabilitation program. So when that person gave me those 50,000 US dollars, I thought, I need to do something good with this money. So they basically became the seed money for developing Nosen. And interestingly enough, like the spring, Easter 2013, I said naively, imagine having a yoga retreat center here. And then the next year, 2014, I'm finding myself running around trying to scout out cheap places that I can buy, maybe that we could take over, but I couldn't find anything. And then somebody told me, why don't you go and check out Nosen? Where's Nosen? I don't know where that is. And I go to that very place. And that's the very place where I said naively, imagine having a yoga retreat center here.
Wow.
Oh, that's
And
incredible.
then to cut the long story short, the place, it wasn't really for sale, but I could rent it for free in exchange that I would kind of rehabilitate it and do it up. So I started doing that. And the long story of it is that eventually I was promised that I could buy it, but then I didn't have enough money. And then the neighbor who lived at Nosen, who had a cabin, because eventually Nosen was going to be sold. And the choice was either me, that I would buy it, or a guy who was doing car racing on the ice. So he was going to have retreats from Germany and Denmark, and they'll come up and do rallycross driving on the winter ice. There's no way I want to have these people around. So, he sits down to me and say, look, here's another 50,000 kroner. Just take it.
Wow.
I want you. So I, received more than
Wow.
1,000 US dollars
Wow.
that I for free from people just like wanting me to have a. And then to top it off, when I finally signed the deal that, okay, I'm going to buy Nosen, and that was in the autumn of 2015. Then I go to India. We were going with a group of, 12 people from back in the ring, and we were doing some project there. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've ruined my life. I would never be able to run this yoga retreat center. I will go bankrupt. It will just be terrible. But while I'm in India, the kind of refugee crisis happened. And suddenly when I came back to Norway 2015, there was a refugee crisis. And the government was basically looking for people who could store these refugees. So then I was able to kind of negotiate a deal with the kind of Norwegian Foreign Office. And we were a refugee center for 100 refugees from December 2015 to March 2016.
Refugees from
It was Syria, right?
Syrian
The
refugees,
Syrian
yeah.
refugee crisis.
Syrian
Was
refugees,
it Syria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the payment was so good, when we had 100 people and the deal was so good. So we basically made, after all expenses were paid, $100,000 per month. And imagine 3 months running a refugee center. Then we suddenly had the money to rehabilitate the place. And, we
Yeah.
exchanged the roof, we exchanged the window, we exchanged everything. So that's the whole story,
Wow.
how kind of Nosen developed. And then, of course, it became like we had to be novices trying to run a cafe, a restaurant, a hotel, a retreat center. Yeah. And then
Yes.
we learned by trial and error. And I
Right.
had some great people also who helped me and who worked there. It was amazing, because I couldn't have done this by myself, but somehow I was the instigator and the instrument of just like landing that whole yoga hotel that we have here now in Norway,
Yeah.
which has
That's amazing.
become a very beautiful place.
Wow. And so it's also a place where you have like many different programs happening, lots of different retreats, but also are there still the addicts that are coming in and, being able to go there and maybe work there or just use that as sort of an intermediary stop between entering real life, or is there something going on that way?
Well, in the beginning, when we started, the whole kind of Norwegian Justice Department and drug rehabilitation department thought we were just crazy, teaching people yoga. It's never going to work. And, who are these mad people? But now they suddenly, seen the result in some of the people we worked with. So because we've always been open, and been very important to me that nursing should always have an open space and a big heart for helping people in need as long as they are willing to help themselves. Believe me, we have had some real challenging people there who caused also some troubles to us, but most of the time, if we have somebody who's willing to do the work, it goes smoothly and it goes well. Um, but now we have, two people who are there from the criminal justice department who are doing like the last part of their sentence there. And we have another guy
Oh,
who's finished prison who's just staying there because he wants to be part of the environment and he feels it's a great place to be. And we have another four people who struggle with drugs that just stay there and help with various things from, cleaning rooms to cooking food and, making coffee, stuff like that. So now we actually started our own rehab and we even made a website for that. It's called nosenrehab.no, and you can look. It's all in Norwegian, of course. It's not in English. But to me, I want to give something back to society. If we can't give something back, then for what reason are we doing what we're doing? So that was very important for me to have that kind of circular service. We have now some people that are employed full time, and then we have some people that are volunteering, and then we have these back in the ring people who are just like trying out, helping out, and kind of working on themselves at the same time while they're being there. And most of the time, that goes very smoothly in the interaction with guests because everybody has a lot to learn from service. Service in
yeah.
any way, to your human neighbor, brother, sister, whoever they if we can let go of our own stuff and just be of service, we grow as individuals. But of course, we make money as a business by being a hotel that, rent out rooms, having yoga retreats, having various conferences and, courses. And now we have some of the top companies in Norway, like Equinor, Yara. They come and they book a few weeks with us every year. They have
Wow.
their HR department or, like a
Yeah.
strategy treatment or something like that. So
Hmm.
That's incredible. They'll get you a knighthood in Norway.
Knighthood. But it is such a beautiful location, right? Like, it's in the heart of the mountains, and there's
Yeah,
nature all around. Nature's so healing and
yeah.
so like, such a beautiful place for people to go and really connect with, I don't know, the energy of life, the energy within themselves, and the energy of the planet, it seems. So, I can imagine it's very attractive for all different types of people to go there.
Yeah, of course, to us, it's like heaven and hell at the same time because everything
Yeah.
has a double-edged thing, it has a beautiful nature and it's a calm, peaceful environment. But for some other kind of people who are back in the ring, after some time they hate it, because if they want to go to the shop, it's like 20 kilometers and there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You have to deal with the people that's there. You have to deal with yourself. And sometimes you just want to say, fuck it, I want to get out of here, you know?
Running 20 kilometers is great for their condition.
Some people walk that
Really.
way, you know, when they're really, yeah.
You really need to get away. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go watch.
I wanna ask you about the ring. I'm sorry, what was it again?
Back in the ring.
Back in the ring. Back in the
Back of the room.
um. I was able to work with a boxing teacher in Milwaukee who was interested in what we were doing, and we had some commonalities, and it was exciting, especially around the breath. And he was able to explain to me that how cerebral a sport boxing is, which I had never considered. Like Mike Tyson said, like, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. And so there's this element to boxing that's really like this heaven and hell piece, like you mentioned, that you're trying to maintain your sense of calm and equanimity through the breath because you're panicking because someone's trying to punch you.
Mhm.
And so there's this element of violence where you're doing harm and being harmed. At the same time, you're really hyper focused on maintaining your breath so that you can think your way like a chess match through a fight. And it's really a thinking man's sport. And I was really fascinated by it. And I wonder if that resonates for you.
Well, definitely. First of all, you know, all the best boxers, the best fighters, they are intelligent fighters. You know, they box with their brain rather than just with their gut or their fist or their muscles. Because there's also saying in boxing, if you get angry, you lose the fight. You know,
Yeah.
raw anger. A lot of people think Mike Tyson was just brutal and raw, and he was at a certain time in his life. But, you know, it needs a lot of wakeful thinking, and to
Mm.
have a presence, and not to freak out and not to fear and panic. Because when you panic,
Mm.
you know, you freeze and then you normally knocked out. So
Mhm.
to me, you know, boxing is brutal, and in the long run, too many blows to the head is not good. But at the same time, when you're in it, and there is that kind of toe-to-toe experience and that energy of finding focus and presence and just being finding problem solving and realizing there's nowhere to escape. What do you do? It's like the battlefield of the Bhagavad Gita. What do you do when you're
Mm.
so faced with this enormous threat? And this is life, you know, finding a calm, finding a rhythm, finding a balance, not being hard, not responding, reacting in a manic
Mm.
manner, but finding a kind of soft, relaxed way. The best boxers are always the one who, you know, like I say, they're able to be awake in the head rather than instinctive.
Mm.
So one of the reasons why I called this project Back in the Ring also is because, of course, I had some glory days in boxing when I felt alive and full of energy, and it was a beautiful experience. Of course, there were some blows to the faces and some pain, but there is a rhythm and art and skill in boxing, which is about presence. And if you could find that, you know, you find a presence with life. And also, of course, back in the ring, if you want to get back on your feet after being knocked down by life from either drugs or crime, whatever, it takes some resilience.
Mm.
And you need to pick yourself up, find that inner strength of you, because nobody else can save you than yourself. You know, you can be your
Mm.
greatest friend or your greatest enemy, but unless you find that support and stability and solid ground of strength within yourself. You know, you can give a drug addict all the treatments in the world, but it's never going to help unless he find that core and strength within himself.
Mm.
Mm.
I love this. I feel like this is such a theme for you in your life. As you described the boxing, I feel like it's the same thing that we're kind of searching for and looking for in a yoga practice or a meditation practice or pranayama or you're free diving, it's like all about really taking things to this point in life that's where you're really experiencing presence, that concentration, that coming face to face with sort of, I don't know, the essence of life is really like a high for you in a way. And even like your story of creating the retreat center and like, you have nothing. And then people are like, because when you have nothing, you're face to face with this presence, right? You got to
Yeah.
get really concentrated and
To survive.
to survive. And I think there's something in as you describe this, and as you spoke of the Bhagavad Gita, I was thinking about you reading the Bhagavad Gita to Patabi Joyce on, as he's dying and
On
he's
his deathbed.
in Sanskrit. And I feel like there's so much of the Bhagavad Gita actually being played out in your story, like
Yeah.
personally in a way. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of like the perfect thing, like the perfect metaphor. Like you really are the perfect person to be bringing yoga. And I mean, more importantly, when I say yoga, I mean like this presence, like this ability to help people to like a chariot people, like be the charioteer of people into that battlefield and
The
say
Krishna.
like, yeah, the Krishna, like this is life. Like we're doing it now and help them to experience the terror and the joy and the peace and all of the things that come up when you're faced with that essence of
Right.
life or that presence. And it's just really beautiful. It's just like your entire being just was revealed to me, like chapter 11.
Well, like it's interesting how our life turns out and kind of manifests into different shapes and form because when I was spending all that time in Mysore studying Sanskrit, studying the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishad, the Yoga Sutras, whatever it was, it's like I was going into it with such love and passion and absorption. And of course, I read the Bhagavad Gita at least 1,000 times, and it
Yeah.
has festered in me such a, you know, it's given me so much strength to conquer difficulties or to simply just stand up with a kind of straight spine and know that, okay, no matter how difficult it is, or like say with a reference to boxing ring, you feel you're knocked out and counted out, but still there is hope as long as you're willing to like step forward and do the work.
Mhm.
What I taught all of the back in the ring people also, it was Bhagavad Gita. It was like we had a chapter every day. I would go through some passages and teach them, about the essence of each chapter and say, try to reflect like this. And what I'm trying to say is that all that time I had in Mysore studying Sanskrit, it kind of trying to facilitate healing to a group of people who is somehow, neglected and people feel, oh, there's no hope for them. That time there in India, it was just like incredibly valuable. And later, you also have to be a businessman and running a hotel. I never cared about business. I never cared about money, really. I just wanted to study Sanskrit and study yoga. And suddenly you have to make things work, and
Yeah.
somehow, the background from the Bhagavad Gita gives you that kind of uh, security and stability to face the challenges and difficulties of life with some kind of composure and balance and trust that,
Mhm.
okay, let's see what works out. Let's see what happens now. I don't really know. It could crash, it could fail, but somehow things work out if you're willing to just kind of step up and do the work. And that's what happened with Back in the Ring, because I didn't have the skills myself, thinking I knew how to help in rehabilitation, but the skills I had from yoga and the skills I had from Sanskrit and the Bhagavad Gita and all these great other texts, sharing that gave me an edge of giving them a new experience of themselves and looking at themselves in a new way.
Yeah. I love how you bring that in. Like life itself is is a battlefield and learning to balance your books or memorizing passages from the Gita, like you have to do both. You can't just like immerse yourself into, the spiritual world. I mean, you can, but I mean, life's still there, right? Especially when you have a family, and especially if you want to give back to other beings, you have to be able to manage yourself as well. And so I feel like that's kind of the part of yoga that sometimes, when you're a young practitioner or a young teacher, you think, "Oh, I'm just going to teach yoga, and my whole life's just going to be yoga, and I'm going to just be able to focus on my spiritual practice, and life's going to be perfect and fine, and there's going to be no difficulties. I'm not going to have to deal with all this bullshit," right?
Yeah, but let's face it, the modern world of yoga is narcissistic. It's being destroyed by too much I, me, and myself, where it's a kind of luxury problem we have.
It's interesting, like, that you say this is a kind of luxury problem, and that, like, the true yoga is kind of being destroyed by narcissism in a way, and that it's all about, like, how can I better myself? How can I, like,
Mhm.
do all these fancy things? And coming from someone who's very advanced, a very
Fancy.
advanced asana practitioner, very advanced,
Very fancy.
yeah, very fancy. You know,
It's a
what,
shame I don't
like,
hardly have any pictures. It's before Instagram and all of that. So it's
No one knows.
I
No one
know.
yeah.
remembers
Anyway,
us, mate.
But it kinda gives an interesting viewpoint and perspective of, like, how do you shift that? Like, when people are being so inundated with this idea that that's yoga, and maybe
Mhm.
even yourself going so deep into the asana practice, like,
Mhm.
I mean, there is, like, a little confusion that happens sometimes where you start to think that that is yoga. And
Mm.
I mean, your whole life and your whole story, I mean, yoga's showing up in all these different ways and areas in your life.
Mm.
And probably even more so now as you're, serving others and facilitating others' journey. But, like, how do you kind of get out of that confusion or that illusion that,
Well,
this 2-hour
I
thing
think
you're doing on your mat is yoga?
I think kind of age gave me that benefit, because 10 years ago, I'm 55 now. I mean, 10 years ago, I was 45 and I had an accident with my shoulder and I couldn't really, do some of the great postures anymore. And it didn't look good when I took it with my phones. Anyway, I wasn't never really too caught up in, just trying to show myself on Instagram. But if it'd been like 20 years ago, I'd probably been all over the place and kind of trying
Yeah.
to promote myself in any way I could. But I got really inspired by, the Ramakrishna mission and the Vivekananda, and of course, also Shivananda, what they done to the service of yoga. And I think there was, Vivekananda has a quote, you know, to do good and be good. That's the all end of yoga, and to give us some kind of service to humanity. And I also felt like being a asana teacher, which I've been now for 28 years, and I started teaching yoga in '96 first time, and to me it was stimulating to see people could relax from doing, but the obsession with postures also kind of appalled me in a way, having a background as a dancer, and you've seen it, and you gymnasts can even do it better, so why bother? But
Yeah.
10 years ago, I felt like to somehow be of service, although in my naive manner thinking, oh, I'm going to teach inmates yoga asana and maybe that'd be good for them, and I'm thinking, oh, I better try to do some good work, or for drug addicts. But what I realized, it was much more teaching them yoga was just a metaphor for dealing with life, and how we are present with life. Because the beauty of a yoga asana class is also you get a direct experience of your body. You have to deal with your aches and pains and tensions and strains and feeling discomfort, and learning
Mhm.
to embody a sense of being in the midst of feeling restricted and awkward. And having that practice every day, you know, was the kind of my stepping stone in order to kind of provide some kind of service. Um, but then I couldn't just be an asana teacher, because half of the people couldn't even come to class, or some of the people was just so, inflicted by aches and pains, so they could hardly move their body. So then, the real um, extension of yoga is bringing it to, you don't have to be a asana teacher or do asana to be a great yogi. Is to find focus in the midst of life, here and now, with what you are doing, and appreciating your work, appreciating your relationship, appreciating the connections you have with people. That's the greatest yoga.
Yeah.
But I guess I could have never learned that from not spending, 30 years of practicing serious
That's the
asanas.
irony. Yeah, it is.
But the final thing is like, it's like Guruji used to say, like, what do you need to understand yoga? Say primary series is more than enough. If you're little, dull, you have to learn second series. If you're really stupid, then third series. And it's a
Learn
bit like
third.
that. Modern world of yoga, we get obsessed with the asana and thinking that's all there is to it. But nobody will become enlightened from just doing a back bend, no matter how well you can grab your ankles, shins
No.
or whatever. We experience ourselves in relation to others. And when we can keep peace of mind, have a harmonious heart, and feel we can be of some kind of service and can create surplus and growth and joy to people around us, then we're doing service to yoga. When we're just being caught up with yoga in a narcissistic manner, it becomes just for self-absorption.
Yeah,
Yeah.
solipsistic. I just want to thank you so much. It's always such a profound delight talking to you. When are you going to Nosen?
Soon. We will be there in just a few weeks, actually, at the end of May.
Really?
Yeah, May 30th is the start of.
And how long will you be there?
I will be there for a 4-day retreat.
Okay, so no one's going to miss the Mike Tyson fight on Netflix on July 20th with YouTuber Jake Paul. I have to promote that. I'm now at the age where I'm like really looking forward to the old man beating the shit out of a kid.
Oh,
I want
no.
we're like fingers crossed Jake Paul goes to the hospital. So we'll
There's
see.
some battles in life that will always be cruel. That's have to learn the hard way.
We're looking forward to that. And so look.
And I think I'll see you. Will I see you at the end of May, Alex?
Of course, I'll be there, and you have to come to our house, and we'll treat you. I make a dinner for you, and it'll be wonderful to see you, Harmony. So, Russell, you can't make it.
Really like to come, but I was not invited.
Next time. Next time.
Next
We'll
time,
do a big
yeah.
Finding Harmony retreat in Nosen.
We will go to Göteborg next year, and I'm excited. I'm super excited for that. So maybe we can catch up.
I can show you around Gothenburg. I lived 3 years in Gothenburg, so I can take you around to all the secret places.
Wow, you even know how to pronounce it in English. That's amazing.
Gothenburg.
Göteborg.
In Swedish, it's Göteborg. In English, it's Gothenburg. Göteborg.
I'm still saying Göteborg.
You go.
Göteborg.
You're like somewhere in between.
I'm
That's
somewhere
okay.
in
Old
between.
fashioned is hard to break. We all know that.
Very good.
Next time on the Finding Harmony podcast with Alex, we will talk about samskara.
Right.
Ooh. Yeah. That's
Old patterns are hard to break. Right.
Never ending.
We can just do our Duolingo before we
Beautiful.
go. We can study a little bit of Swedish.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you loved it. And if you would like to work more intimately with me in a deeper way, then I would invite you to sign up for this 4-day retreat I'm teaching at Nosen Mountain Lodge in Norway. This is Alex's retreat center, and I will be teaching there May 30th to June 3rd. It's a retreat called Unlayering, using yoga as a tool for spiritual wellness to increase your energy and fulfillment. And we're going to use all of the somatic practices we have to help release and let go of the patterns, the thoughts and the beliefs, and maybe even the habits that are no longer serving you as a practitioner, and step into a whole new way of embodying yoga within your life. So this is a really beautiful time of connecting and exploring nature in a setting where you can go within and find silence and stillness and solitude, but then also really revitalize your inner well-being, your energy to step into a whole new chapter in your life. I'm excited for this retreat. It's all inclusive. You can find the link in the show notes, and I hope you'll join me May 30th to June 3rd at Nosen Retreat Center. I look forward to meeting you there. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.